If we can save a merchant $10,000 a month, when you look at the multiple effect of what that $10,000 represents, that savings is incredibly multiplied, where it's very significant value to the new buyer.
Welcome to an Encore podcast presentation from Forbes Books at ForbesBooks.com.
I'm here with Jeff Shavitz. He's the president of Merchant Advocate Ventures. They're at merchantadvocate.com. Jeff, before I let you say a single word, I just want to read something from your website. We save you money or you pay nothing. We help merchants save money from the unregulated credit card industry without having to switch processors. That sounds like a beautiful thing. So welcome and tell us about it.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I've been in the payment space for about 20 plus years, and about 15 years ago, we founded this solution, which is quite different than the very competitive landscape of traditional credit card processing. What happens typically in the merchant services world, someone comes in, says, "Hey, Greg, I can save you $1, but in order to save that $1, you're going to have to switch your credit card terminals, switch your credit card point of sale systems, your computers, and it's a very cumbersome experience." Right.
There's just to build on that, in the scenario that a lot of people are accustomed to, you're going to save me $1 after I spend $100,000 getting ready to save the first $1.
Right. And my initial foray into the industry, I built a company doing exactly that. We became one of the larger independent credit card processors in the United States. We grew to about 500 people in the U.S. and we were talking and working with literally every kind of merchant, from the solos to the Fortune 100. But as we got to the bigger merchants, the experience of the conversion was like, "Hey, Jeff, we want to save the money. We just can't switch out 2,500 credit card machines. It's just too difficult. And God forbid the reputational risk. If we go down for even a split second, we cannot take Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover as a form of payment."
Yes.
So 15 years ago, my partner and I founded Merchant Advocate Ventures, and the concept was antithetical to what I used to do. We are not. This is probably the most important part of this interview and discussion. We are not a credit card processing company. We're really the advocate and the partner to help disclose and uncover all the hidden fees that are transparent in the credit card industry. So what we would do is we would come in to a merchant, big or small, and say, "Hey, Greg," assuming you are the merchant, "we don't want to be your processor. We don't want you to change anything. But let us come in and help you analyze and read this very difficult credit card statement that you're getting on a monthly basis." To many people, including many people in our company, it's still very difficult to discern all the different nuances of a credit card statement. So once we can understand if there's a savings of $1,000 a month, 100,000, whatever the number is, we help negotiate with the incumbent, and we contact these processors and say, "Hey, we represent Greg's company. Let us go through. We see that there's some issues here," and then we get that number to a rate that we know is acceptable. We want the processor to make money, but not take advantage of our clients. And then every month, our organization becomes the external CFO only on the credit card side to our merchants. And on a monthly basis, we analyze these statements. And again, if we help find that $1 in savings, to your point, the quote you mentioned a few minutes ago, we revenue share. So if we save a merchant $0, we make nothing, and we'll put the time to do that analysis and that work. But we've had about a 97% success rate, and some of our clients are the most famous clients in the world, the Fortune 50 organizations, down to the mom and pop, the neighborhood restaurant, retail store, internet website. And again, I equate it to like reading your telephone bill. Me and you as consumers, when we get our cell phone bill, our phone bill, they're really very difficult to understand. And by having a third-party advocate, helping to look over the shoulder of Visa, MasterCard, it's a comfort. And we've been able to save, to date, we've saved over $110 million for our clients in the past 15 years.
I actually, when I first learned about your company, I met one of your colleagues at a YPO event in Washington, D.C. When I first heard about it, the thing that came to mind for me as an analogy is a hospital bill. And we've all heard stories about people being misbilled, overbilled, incorrectly billed. And similarly, I think, but I want to hear your input on this, if you have a very large hospital bill, you can find an advocate who will analyze it for you and make sure it's correct so that you're not paying or overpaying for either things you didn't get or you're just not paying the right amount. Is that a fair analogy?
It's a very fair analogy. And it's funny you say hospitals. That's one of our largest verticals. We've got about 120 national hospitals as clients. And
I'm laughing because they're so notorious for
right,
having billing issues.
We didn't even discuss this in advance, so this is purely serendipitous that you mentioned hospitals. But what we would say to a CFO is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. CFO, you're running an entire organization. We are experts in one small subset of finance, which happens to be credit card processing, merchant services. And what happens is, this is sort of a real expertise, we're not just looking at, like, we can lower someone's rate from 3% to 2.5%. That's sort of easy.
That's you negotiating for me as an advocate, but
right,
you're going much deeper than that.
Right. So what we do, which is quite different than a traditional credit card processor, if you're paying $100 copay when you go to the doctor, what we do is we look at, there's 600 variables and credit card rates that comprise the effective rate. So what we do is we look at, you pay your $100, we look at behind the scenes what we call a bucket. What interchange, which is the classification by Visa MasterCard, what interchange bucket is it going to? And if we can help reduce that bucket, that could be, in our terminology, 0.5% of 1% or 50 basis points is an incredible savings. So we've been able to help Fortune 100 companies that literally have no markup, like it's literally a pass-through, but we are able to save them, in some cases, millions of dollars a month, or for a smaller merchant, it could be $100 a month, by looking at the transaction and making sure it flows to the lowest possible interchange rate.
Are you allowed to name drop any of those very large companies you work with?
We do a lot within professional sports. The Boston Red Sox, we represent many, many professional teams at all the different leagues. The Orange Bowl, one of the college football, is one of our clients. It really covers the gamut. We're not industry specific to just restaurants or retail or internet or sports or hospitals. Now, as we become more of a cashless society, everyone is taking credit cards or some form of a credit card. We have identified, in addition to employees and rent in some cases, that the actual cost of a credit card transaction is a very, very significant fee. And we find that so many businesses are so busy running their day-to-day that because the credit cards, you're never writing a check to Visa MasterCard.
Right.
It's called an ACH. The money comes out automatically. So it's one of those sort of expense line items. If you see it being the same every month, you assume you're relatively in good shape. But we've come in and we've discovered and uncovered major, major money. And in our world, the merchant / client's world, this money falls right to their bottom line.
Yes.
So I've actually argued for, we work with a lot of private equity firms as well, that if we can save even a merchant, let's say $10,000 a month, when you look at the multiple effect and the EBITDA effect of what that $10,000 represents in the case of a future sale, that savings is incredibly multiplied, where it's very significant value to the new buyer.
When I sign my company up to work with Merchant Advocate Ventures, please tell me that there isn't some poor person there with like a green shade who's poring over my credit card bill line by line. I'm hoping, for all of our sakes, including your team's, that this is something that has been automated with an algorithm or artificial intelligence or some other means of leveraging the power of data processing in the cloud.
Yes, we use a combination of technology, artificial intelligence, plus human labor, because without that, we couldn't automate and scale the company properly. But there is, for some of our clients, where there's a lot of nuance, and because the credit card industry has made these statements incredibly complex to read, that we do have human beings also assigned to our accounts, but we also have filters and technology in the AI, and we're looking to build even greater dashboards that are purely technology interface, so the automation is there. But we have found, and there's some incredibly, the payment industry now is bringing in lots of venture capital money, a lot of private equity money. There's companies like Stripe and Square and other ones, and PayPal, that the idea of, and Venmo on a different level, which is not going through Visa, MasterCard. The payments industry in general is a very hot space right now. But because it's so hot and because there's so much credit cards being used, and it's becoming more of a monopoly right now with only a handful of major players left, that what's happening is there's these credit card terminals, and the credit card machine can cost a few $100s. We have seen statements where people have been leasing or renting this machine for 20 years, $39 a month for 20 years, where the merchant just didn't, it's only $39, but they spent $20,000 now for a $200 machine. And what's happening in the payment space, there are fee increases. But when a fee increase happens, how do you know it's being passed through exactly? Let's say it's a 2 basis point increase. Some processors may increase it by 12 basis points. So by having the advocate, by having a second set of eyes, we know what we're looking for, and we know, and we would contact on a monthly basis the process. You represent Greg. We see here that there was an erroneous fee of an extra $10, 10 basis points, and we get it pushed back to where it should be. And we continuously do this on a month-in, month-end basis for the term of our agreement.
So Jeff's company is Merchant Advocate Ventures. The website is merchantadvocate.com. And Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. I was so excited when I learned about your company, and you've just done a great job of really painting an even more robust picture of it. And I hope lots of people, when hearing this, will reach out and take up that invitation of uploading their processing information and find out what's possible.
Greg, thanks so much for the time this morning. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this Encore podcast presentation from Forbes Books at forbesbooks.com.